Welcome to Plant Wisdom.
Welcome.
I'm sitting here with my partner Stephan in our little garden house, in our little chocolate house as we call it,
Hmm.
with clay on our walls, and
And
it's
some cup of teas.
some tea from the garden, and it's March, and all the plants are starting to pop up outside, and the birds are returning, and we want to share something about dietas, and more specifically about Nordic dietas. So a little bit about what is, or maybe a lot, who knows.
Let's see what comes up.
Let's see what comes up. We have not planned anything, so we see what comes.
Hmm.
However, the overall plan is to have fun and to talk about Nordic dietas and why someone would engage in such a practice and what it can do, what we see that it does for us, and what we see that happens with our clients through this kind of deep practice.
Yeah, what you feel like, should we start a little bit about our history in Dieta?
Yeah, we can.
So, as you might know, that we went both to the jungle and learned a practice there which is called Dieta, which is basically Spanish for diet. And this refers to a physical diet. Of course, we will go into the thing fasting, and on top of it, and this is the main part we want to talk about it, is a spiritual connection to a plant.
Yeah, so just to really become clear, we're not talking about any kind of dietary restrictions or directions. This is a spiritual practice, but it does include some dietary restrictions and directions while you're doing it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And yeah, maybe we've both been living and studying in the jungle, working with Amazonian plants, and then coming home to the north and reintroducing it with the plants here, and also the plants here teaching us that they kind of need some differences. This landscape and this climate and these plants are calling for other nuances. So there is kind of shifts happening when you start dieting Nordic plants such as birch versus dieting some of the Amazonian plants in the jungle.
Yeah, I think the main difference here is the seasons. The jungle around the equator has its rainy, more or less, or drier periods, but it's always almost the same type of temperature. So there is no real season. Every tree has fruits, has flowers, has leaves all the year round. Some not, but
Yeah, and they
basically it
have their
is. They
cycles,
have their
right?
cycles, but not as so dominant as in the north.
Yeah, so here we'll, it's quite different going into this practice with a plant in the height of summer, where everything is buzzing with life and everything here is saying like grab me, and ah, or if you're doing it kind of in the dead of the winter, really like working with that introverted energy that comes with the winter, and like having a plant dieta to kind of help you into that. And just to say, it is, I don't, dieting in the winter, I mean still being in a cold country. I don't mean like taking an airplane to Peru and then dieting there in the winter and then returning. That's I mean, we've done that for many years. It's beautiful too, but it's that's a different thing. You're still kind of in a warm climate, so it's not like a winter dieta. Yeah.
Truly, truly, yeah, we of course come from the tradition of those Amazonian tribes, and we see it in a way that we also have the trees, we have the mountains, we have the streams, we have all the medicine, so to say, we need. The spirits are still there. What we have forgotten is the ways to talk and to connect with. And those Amazonian tribes have somehow an unbroken lineage to that knowledge. So, what we learn from them are the ways, are the methods, are the tools, and most of them are working quite well for our more Nordic plants, while there's some great difference as well.
Yeah, and maybe also just to mention that this is a deep, I would call it a spiritual practice where you connect with a plant. You connect with a plant as a teacher. You're inviting it into your system, and you're in a way merging with it. And thus, as I feel it, it's like a process of mothering. So I am mothering this little seed of a plant inside of me, and that's where we talk about the restrictions. Like while you're in the, so to say, vipassana of the plant diet, or while you're in the temple of the plant diet, you're mothering the plant, you're taking care of it. You have this little seedling inside of you, and afterwards it kind of grows and it gets its roots into everything, and you start merging with it, and then later it, at the same time, it is mothering you. So it is helping you, like you can go through these like really deep healing processes, really, really profound shifts of state of being with the plants. And part of what I really love about this practice is that it is so grounded as well. I mean, in per se, I would say, like in principle, you could diet the moon, or you could diet Mary Magdalene, right? You could go into a deep relationship with them, but when you do it with a plant, you have the physicality of the plant. You're drinking the extract of the plant. There's something so physically in the body, in this material world, that makes it quite special, versus having a practice that is like going into a cave somewhere and meditating with Buddha, which, I mean, I have not done that, and I'm not down that tradition, but that must be really profound as well. But it has a very different sense of physicality and what you are connecting with, like what is guiding you on that path. And within the world of dietas, there's so many varieties, right? Like there is within the world of yoga, or within the world of meditation or mindfulness, or Buddhism, or whichever way. What we've been studying within one certain lineage, within the Shipibo lineage, and mainly with one teacher, Don Ronald Lopez. So that's really where we get like our version of it. And I just really want to mention that, just to say that whatever we say here is coming from our felt experience. It's from like how we feel this in our body, but that doesn't mean that it's the same for you, or it's the same for everybody. Like somebody might have a different way of relating, and also every year it goes deeper. Every year my perspective on dietas shifts, and every year I become wiser within it, right? So in 10 years, if we have this conversation again, it will probably look different. Yeah.
So you can also, there are many metaphors about what a dieta is. You can call it as their way to heaven, where the plants help you to go to a state of mind and an interconnection between beings and realms, where you also and basically find yourself. Therefore, having a dieta doing a dieta is a highly individual process. It's your relationship with that specific plant. And as you know, even if I have different relationships with different people, those people have different relationship between each others. So you cannot say that one dieta is the same like another one. And even if you would diet a plant several times, that will deepen that relationship and maybe even shift it, because new aspects of yourself, new aspects of the plant are coming into your system, and you learn to walk that path and to navigate it.
Thank you. And just to I really like what you're saying, both that it's so individual, but also that like a plant dieta can really help integrate you back into the web of life, right? You basically try your very best, and the plant is helping you to come back into communion with the earth and with yourself. So it's like I am a different being than Stephan. Yeah, at the end we could say we're all the same, but like on this kind of, in this lifetime, in this 3D world, and the way that you do that, like Dieta is really about, as I feel it, and what you're saying as well, it's about creating relationship. relationship to the plant, and through that relationship to ourselves, to the different parts in ourselves, to the wounded parts and the small inner children and the creative sides, relationship to our imagination, relationship to our garden, to our partners, to our friends, like, and so it really like puts its roots out into everything. But exactly like what you're saying with that every relationship is different, it really like a relationship between humans, it matters what you bring into the relationship. So you can't just like go, oh, now I'll do a diet, but I'll just sit and watch movies all the way through. That's not really gonna create a deep relationship. So it what you bring into it is in a way like that depends on, like, that's the depth, right? Which also then means where you are in your spiritual journey. If you can meditate, if you can sit with a plant, or if you get distracted all the time, like what and that's why it's like, it's all, there's really no competition in this. There's really no like what's better or what's worse. It's all like us and our relationships, and how that integration back into the web of life can bring us closer to our purpose. Or for me, it's really about, singing and dancing and playing and being in community, and like being in life with the wonder, with the curiosity, but also with the actions of like, doing what we feel like we're here to do.
Yeah. Brings me into that Dieta in another perspective is, I would almost say, a spiritual operation. So seeing our, how to bring that the best, our mind, our spirit is some sort of living in a house with a garden. So, and through our life we manage that. And in us there are different voices. There are old voices, young voices, male and female, and we have a council of them, and meeting them each day, and with every decision we make, and have a board meeting now and then, and sometimes this aspect is louder, sometimes another aspect is louder, and maybe we have to soothe one or bring one further up. That is what we do all the time. And with a Dieta, we suddenly open the door for someone else. And that is might be a little bit scary. Well, not really scary. I think most people love to have some other voices with them to bring some more wisdom and insight and growth into a system which you might know for 20, 40, 50, 60 years. So, but what it does, it takes its place, and it has its roots into this aspect, into this aspect. And by the way, this aspect, I think that's outdated. How about removing that? Ooh. And suddenly we have a, let's say, tree, plant growing in us. And in that wild atmosphere, I mean wild, not crazy, we want to have a gardener. Sometimes a very good idea of someone who knows, a little bit trimming the roots there, a little bit soil more here, or maybe some nourishment and not so much distraction. That will help to settle it, and that is our job. So, and there is also many ways of doing that gardening. As I said in the beginning, we have our own lineage and our training, and other people doing it different. They're doing it more social. They have other ideas with it. So yeah, there is.
It's kind of like gardening, right? Some do biodynamic, some do permaculture, some do organic, some do conventional gardening. And I think we could all agree that maybe conventional gardening or monoculture is not what we want to have in our inner, in the garden of our heart, right? And I I really like the metaphor of a gardener and a garden for many things, but especially for a dieta. It is like you come to a master, or a maestro or maestra, or a guide like us that has some sort of passed down lineage or has some sort of energy cultivated or learned. And what they do is that they in a way pre-sprout. So if we say a little birch tree or a little oak tree, they have a deep connection, or when we facilitate, it would be Stephan and me, we have a deep connection to birch, so we pre-sprout little birch. And then someone comes with us to the forest and want to diet birch, and there's of course a big process beforehand, but then they receive this little seedling. And when you receive that seedling, that's when you really go into the diet process, and where you would have those, as we talked about, restrictions. And see it exactly like if you were to plant a little birch seedling in your garden. If you were to pour a bunch of salt over it, the roots probably would die. Like if you were to not water it in any way, if you were to just like tramp all over it, like so these restrictions are quite important. And some of them are dietary, with like you don't eat salt, you don't eat oil.
Sugar.
Yeah, when we facilitate, we bring biodynamic vegetables in, so the only thing you receive is like a really high quality. You don't want to put any suffering into yourself at that time, right? And there's also restrictions around sex and around social media and like all these things, and depending on how you do it. But a more traditional sense is that you do it in isolation, where you could also do what is called the social dieta, where you're still kind of in the world interacting. So in a more traditional sense, or in the isolation dieta, as an example, you go with us into the Swedish forest, you get your little seedling, and then you're growing with it. Right, so you're mothering the seedling, you're taking care of it, but you have these two master gardeners that are like, "Ooh, something's up there," or like, "No, not there," and then it starts putting its roots into you. And as Stephan said, like root into this aspect, or this old trauma, or this old like defense mechanism. And what happens when you do this and you're fasting, like no matter what, you're going to be intermittent fasting, right? And then suddenly all these things start cracking up in you. Like all these roots comes out everywhere, and old patterns emerging, old defense mechanism, old things like stored somatically in your body, old traumas, old fight or flight things. And right now, like in that, the diet can help release that. The diet can help reprogram years and years and years of trauma and of suffering and of just misconceptions. And what they also do, as I feel it, is that they like expand our imagination. They help open up that more is possible, and like what we're possible, what we have possible. And I feel it's like in our daily life, it's almost like we walk around telling the same story again and again, right? It's like when they do research, I think it's something about 90% of the thoughts that we have is the same as yesterday. Meaning we're just like one big repeat button. And so we keep repeating, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that, or something like that. And then doing a dieta actually helps pop that open, so new stories can come, which is, oh, I am brave, I'm brave, I'm brave, or I'm abundant, or I'm connected, or and so we practice this. And then at the end of the dieta period, you'll have your kana. It's like the protection. You like plant the little seedling properly in, there's soil over the roots, they're protected, they're like good. And then you go out into your life. You're still mothering the plant is still mothering you, but there's another, it's not as sensitive, and you'll start to like eat normal again, interact with people, have sex, stuff like that. And I feel that like dietas, they grow exactly like they would in nature. Like it takes around a year for a dieta to settle, and for like the roots to have like something proper, stable to then work with.
Yeah. So what comes to my mind is several things. That when we talk about that things are popping up and that things are might cracking, and really to make clear that this is not the entire you. So in our experience, you will get what you can take, and also to make clear that if there is a true essence of you, that will be the same as it was before. There is nothing changed in that. because those plants which we are working with, they are life affirming. They are helping you to become the best person you can become. So there is nothing removed in a way which is the precious you. But we think, or we might think, that some of these things are essential, and they are actually not. So that might be the challenge coming up. And then you will ask maybe yourself, oh, what is, if I love a person, will I love it afterwards when I have changed? And in our experience, if there was love before, there is love afterwards. Um, Nothing is changed in that love. If there was big attachment, if there was codependency, that might look different. But is it really that what you want to go back? It's up to you.
Thank you. If I can just add to
please.
that, I think it's a really important distinction that like on Dietas our attachments, our codependencies, our misconceptions, our like ideas and concepts about ourselves get into play. And the deeper, like my experience personally through my Dietas is the deeper I go with the plants, the more they crack open these illusions I have about myself and about the world. And that's super tough, or it can be super tough. I think it is me. I think it is my entire world. I have put it so much self-worth or identification on something, and so when it cracks it can be really tough, and also it's so relieving. I really feel when I've gone through Dietas that it's like loosening up, it's creating space within me where before there was contraction. And so the process itself, whether it's 2 weeks or a month or 3 months or 5 months or 1 week, the process itself has its challenges where some of all this like gets to grow in. And then afterwards, which I also want to mention, which is highly underestimated, comes the integration. And as we say, it takes around a year, and that, at least for me, is usually where a lot of my challenges come. Like being in the forest, fasting, being alone, being, coming with all these processes, it can be really challenging, but you're in a community of like-minded people. You're in the forest, you have space to be with it, and there's support. And I think that's like one of our key things, and how we really like to do our Nordic Dietas is that there's so much individual support. Like we'll go to every single person every night, serving them their extract and being with them in their processes, which sometimes is hours, that somebody really has a big crack, and then we're there, right? So even though it can be so challenging, everybody there agrees in some ways. So for me it's way more challenging, and I see that in our clients as well. Coming back home into their lives, suddenly have to interact with people that don't agree, that don't believe in energy, that don't believe in plant spirits, that don't understand plant intelligence. And it's not to judge the people that are not yet open for that, but it can be such a challenge to come home with this huge expansion and then having to integrate it again. And that's the work. Yeah. Like that is where the plants also wants us to go in, right? So I feel like when we talk about a dieta, there's the practice when you're in the forest or you're in the jungle, but then there's also the practice of normal day life, and all of it I would include in the dieta talk. I don't feel like we can talk about just the forest without talking about everyday life. They are so like they are connected. And I also, just to mention that you talked earlier about a social dieta, which is where you would be doing that kind of connecting with a plant, but in your everyday life. Like I am still on a very long Blue Lotus social dieta, but I'm still sitting here with technology. And in some ways I feel as a social dieta is almost double as hard as a traditional one, because every time I open my phone, if Instagram is there, if something from Instagram pops up, I get affected and I start feeling bad. So I'm interacting with all these systems that are creating more suffering for me. So I have to clean out way more. Then when I'm in the forest, it's mainly me that I have to deal with in my patterns. But here, suddenly having to deal with my neighbor having a bad day, or like having to go and buy groceries, you know. And so a social dieta, though also really having a space, I would, in my perspective, you do that for a longer period of time because you have to interact with all these other things. And it's so important to have support and guidance in that as well, because you get so affected. But then because you get so affected all the time, you constantly have to go in and have and repair with your diet, which has a completely different kind of beauty as well, and quality as well, that you constantly gets like pulled out and then pulled in, pulled out and pulled in. Where I feel in a more traditional dieta and what we do in the forest, you're like in this space and you can like go deep and deep and deep and deep and deep and deep and deep, and you don't get pulled out. So it really is two very different ways of dieting energy. And then I would say there's a third one, which I would call a plant allyship or an immersion, where you're not in an actual dieta, but you're cultivating a deep relationship with the plant. Like many would do that with cacao. Let's say having 20 days where you drink cacao every day. That is not a dieta, but you can create a really deep relationship in that way. You can have so many benefits and you can have a deep connection, but it isn't the same practice.
No, definitely not.
No, yeah, definitely not. But still a really beautiful practice and can go really deep.
So, yeah, really, I don't think that Dieta is a shortcut. Not in the forest, not at home. It is a path, as there are many paths in this world, and it takes its time.
Yeah.
So, no matter what, in my experience, the slowest parameter on that is me. The plants have, I'm pretty sure, taught me already so much. And if I would be able to really grab that all and put that into my life, oh my God, I would be on a very different place in my life. But I need to grow in my speed, and everyone has to grow, and it takes its time. So there's a certain amount new synapses can grow, even if you do the best supplements and the best training. It just needs its time. And why have we chosen that practice is because it is the most wild process we know, and the most direct. Wild in a way of natural. So I see there's teachers living right on the porch of our door, just waiting to be picked up, to let in. There's nothing special to do besides giving everything, stripping down to the bones, and emerge in the forests. Fast, of course, remove everything as what you can out of your system, out of your mind, and basically pray and cry for a vision. That is also one of the pillars of our Nordic Dieta, is the vision quest. It's a more North American thing about when you go out in the forest for several days and nights and cry for a vision, a transition in your life. And I think here in the Scandinavian corner of the world, there's an old tradition as well, where you go mainly out for one night. But in the principle, it is the same. You ask nature for help. And who else do we have? Yes, we live in a material world where everything is about money and the stuff we have and the stuff we can buy and define ourselves with. But if you break it all down, it all comes from one place, and that is from Earth. And what keeps us alive here is nothing else than the plants and the animals. Nothing else. All the technology, everything around that is built upon it. So the idea with the Dieta is also to remove everything human, so to say, above it, and come back where we came from, back to our origins. And there is the growth, and there is the truth, and there is our true essence, and there is God and everything we need. So in my experience, plants giving us solutions to our physical, spiritual, mind problems in ways we cannot even think of. And that is an amazing thing, because so many problems in this world are mind made. So of course a solution for these has to come somewhere else. It cannot come from the mind. So of course we get solutions in science, great solutions and progress. But there is solutions which need to come from somewhere else. When we ask ourselves, what is our purpose? Why are we here? What should I do in this world? How to exist? How to overcome these personal problems, traumas, and. This has to come from outside of us and outside of the human world, even, I believe. And the plants are helpers, teachers, friends, lovers. They will help us. They, in my experience, if there is a crack coming and opening up yourself, yes, it's the most horrible thing, the most wild thing, the most beautiful thing, because finally there is a pathway towards the light. And isn't that what we're searching for? At least I do, over and over again. So even for us, at least for me, I go back to diet over again and again and again and again. And I think it never ends, because it's a way of living, a path of, yeah, like in the old days, people go to monastery or put their lives into yoga or whatsoever practice, Sufism, or yeah, just what I want to say with that is, even this practice is not yours, then choose another one. They're all having their gold inside of them. And I truly believe if we come over the practice itself, then it doesn't matter if you call yourself a Catholic priest or a shaman or whatsoever. At the very end, we'll meet at the same table. So, and our way is to do it with the dietas. Our way is to do it with the plants.
Mm. I like how you say that we meet at the same table. And my mind kind of caught on to earlier when you said that we remove all the human things and kind of go towards the plant kingdom. But I feel that two things are happening simultaneously there, because in one way I feel like we're learning how to be a plant, right? And as we talked about it before, I think also on this podcast, that like a plant can't run away. It can't run away from its problems like we humans can. So it needs to have some very different strategies for survival. And there's some very interesting things for us to learn in this like animal fight or flight stress taking over, you know, survival that can come in. And at the other side, I do feel that dieting is really teaching me how to be a human. Like what is really essential human, what isn't programming or conditioning, but what is human. And so I can feel very, very human dieting. I remember last time I dieted oak, and we were sitting down by Magnusø, and we were sitting by the water, and there was like 4 of these dragonflies coming. And I felt, and I love that, and I get that on every single diet. I get these moments where I'm fully present, and I'm just so grateful to be alive. I'm like, this is it. Just sitting here, a dragonfly just landed on me, the sun is in my face, and the wind is in these oak trees. I don't need anything. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to perform. I don't need to have. I don't need to anything. I'm just here, present in the web of life, in the world. Those are like the small diamonds of dietas, and of course it can happen outside of a dieta as well, but like in that practice where you really go, you meditate, you fast, you're in silence, you show up with compassion to everything that arises. These moments can like blossom, these flowers can pop, because you're taking care of the seed, you're like taking care of the soil for the flowers to pop up. And one of the other things I really love about dietas, and I think it fits to what you said about all these different traditions, is that like in that way of making it your own. When you're with us in the forest in Sweden, you'll have days where you're alone in your little camp with your little tent and your little hammock and sitting with your tree. What are you gonna do? There's no food you can go and make. It's not like I'll bake a cake or like I'll call my mother. There's really nothing.
Plain snake on the phone.
Plain snake on the phone, exactly. Man, you like there's nothing except dealing with yourself. And so for the people that know how to meditate, it's really helpful to know how to meditate. And when I say meditate, I mean 2 things. I mean one thing, which is to bring yourself into the present moment, like to catch your mind when it goes out into planning the future or bringing shame on the past or like going in circles into whatever. You bring yourself present. That's like part of what I would call meditation, like or what it teaches you, and what a dieta teaches you too.
I feel so too. The
like,
rest is focusing on something.
Yes. So you're like come into presence, and then there is like what do you then do when you're in present? Like, and for some like there's some like Buddhist compassion practices that I work with. Okay, an emotion comes up and I feel super shameful right now. Okay, where does it sit in my body? What does it need? How do I release it? You know. And somebody else might have another practice. I really work a lot with yoga when I'm in the forest. I can't do a lot if I'm fasting a lot, but this thing of like moving the energy of my body, for instance. So it's not that this practice cannot go, like it really, like plants, goes well with each other, and none of them are separated from each other. You don't have a plant, even a potted plant, you know, it like interact in the air. But just this, sometimes we humans can have this idea that a plant is just standing there, it's not doing anything. And it's like plants doing something all the time, and they're connecting with the mycelium network, they're like interacting with each other, they're talking. And so we get to step into that web of life, receive dreams, receive visions, receive wisdom, and give something as well. And I think that's one of the other things, just to mention, that one of like the beauties of Dieta is that once you have done this deep work, you can start sharing it. Not just the wisdom that you receive, but just your pure presence. Like just being with someone who has a Dieta. If you know what to look for, it's like if people come straight out of Dieta, they're all like shiny. It's like, oof, I want to sit next to you. But like, and you know, we have clients that are body workers, for instance, and then like work with their diet when they do treatments. Or clients that just have quote unquote a normal job, but then are like bringing in this kind of presence and joy and fun into that. Like the diets work with us no matter what we do, whether it's like writing an email or doing a ceremony or taking care of our child or a partner. Like you don't have to be quote unquote on a shamanic path where you want to make it your living or you want to facilitate anything for anybody to benefit from a dieta. Like it's really about you and integrating back into the web and becoming friends with nature, and then what pops up in you with that and what pops up in nature with that. And And it's such a gift to be able to give ourselves that amount of time in this world where everything goes so fast and it's so easy to get lost scrolling. It's really an honor and a pleasure and a privilege to be able to slow down and be present with these amazing teachers that live right outside our door. And I feel that's one of the things that I really love about the Nordic Dietas for us living in the north, that these are with plants that we see every day. So it is like, I love my Amazonian teachers, like human and more than human, but I don't see a Bobensana tree every day. Like there's another Bobensana is so deep in my system and I love that plant and I'm like, yeah. And I mean, I get it's so different if you live in a place where you see it every day. And in that way, it's like, for me, birch has such a different home feeling. It's like, oh, here's a birch tree. Like I see it every single day in the garden. That is a different relationship. That's just a different relationship.
It's also something, I would say, ancestral. Birch, really good example of a pioneer plant coming here as one of the first trees pioneering its way after the Ice Age up into the north. Yes, of course. Our far ancestors have built with it, have cooked with it, have drank in it, know it. So if you want to connect with your ancestors, then plants can be a bridge to that as well. A great one. They know our far ancestors, and the same goes with oak. Just going back to the old Celts, where there was no ceremony to be started when there not was at least one leaf of oak present. So, of course, with all that we can connect through the plants, and they are living beings. So, in a way, they know the humans longer as we personally do. So, and they know the ways and can teach us again how to work with them. It sounds, for someone out standing not so deep in the practice, maybe it sounds a little bit weird, but many native tribes are telling the same story, that the plants are coming to them and telling them how they want to be prepared and used. And now, after several years of practice, I can notice that. And of course, I'm not so deep in as our far ancestors have been. We're in an isolated house and having our heating system and everything. Having not a lineage that my grandfather already was introducing me when I was 12 or something. No, but they're still there, and they starting and wanting to tell us how to prepare the medicine. I'm just thinking about elder, where I think I can now make good medicine with it because I'm very much connected to its spirit, and I know what to do and how to prepare it. And that makes a huge difference, because with all the medicines we have and putting it into the petri dishes and extracting those tiny bits, the plant shamanism goes the opposite way, more or less. We take the whole plant and talk with the spirit to help us.
Yeah, can I just add that I think that's kind of another thing of dieting, that it gives you an access point into nature. It gives you like a straight line of energy that you can always return to. So if you're doing energy work, that's like, okay, here's a birch tree. This is always pure. And that portal, that access also is like having a plant guide that can then introduce you to other plants. And so even if it's plants that you're not dieting, like you're not dieting elder and I'm not dieting hawthorn, but we have really deep relationships with those two plants and work with them as medicine. And so dieting can also help us learn how to work with our local medicine. like you can also do that with plant allyships, and that like I love. And I one of the things I see that actually creates a huge shift in many of our clients, whether they diet with us or if they do plant allyships, is that once they start two things. Once they start like working with the local medicines, like harvesting things themselves, going out and getting nettle and making nettle extract, or like eating dandelion leaves, or like these very simple things. And the other one is once they start eating proper vegetables, like once they start buying vegetables from local farms instead of the supermarket, creates a huge difference in connection, difference in the food that they make. Like we have so many clients that come and they just like, you always make amazing food, like I want to have the food you're making at home. And it's like, it's very simple, the food that we make, but everything we do is with biodynamic vegetables. Like a potato isn't just a potato. You know, there's a difference in, now we come back to, is it conventional, is it biodynamic, is it you know, and how has it been taken care of, how has it been prayed with or not. And that dieting can also kind of bring us back into that that ancestral power, I would say. And I like how you bring the ancestors in, because that really is like, yeah, this is some of the most potent work we can do in this time. Like reconnect back to the earth and to our lineages and to the medicine. And as you're saying, like all cultures have different ways of doing it. If it's an ursilning, like in the north, if it's a vision quest, like in the North American tribes, if it's a Dieta, if it's, you know, like da 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 da, it's all different ways of coming home. Yeah. I feel kind of full of words now.
Yeah, I think so. We have
so many words
spoken a lot again.
Yeah. Anything you feel that needs to be added in?
I think that's it for now.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for listening in, and we're gonna continue making videos in our own little speed. And whether you're listening to this on a podcast or if you're seeing the video, it's a pleasure to have you joining our conversations. And you're welcome to reach out if you want to study more plant love with us in any sort of way. Wishing you a lovely spring if you see this more in real time. At least now the sun is starting to shine out here, and the birds are popping around. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Bye bye.
Bye.